Kevin Durant addressed the trade rumors publicly for the first time at practice today, and we're going to get into all of that with the perspective of someone who was actually there, because I know everybody's already freaking out about it. Let's get into the show. What is up, everybody? Welcome into the PHNX Suns show presented by Bet365. Download the Bet365 app and use code PHNX365 when you sign up to find out why, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. I am your temporary host for today, Gerald Bourguet, and joining me for a special Take That for Data edition, can we call it that officially? We got Steven Pridgeon-Garner. Steven, how you doing today?
Doing good. I'm slightly annoyed. I had to retire my favorite pair of basketball shoes this weekend.
Oh no, why? They
were done.
No.
It was a wrap. I can't even walk in them. That's a harsh reality that not enough people speak about. And I mean, I'm living a good life if that's what I'm griping about on a Monday.
Yeah.
I acknowledge that, but I'm also very annoyed by it too. So
that is a sad time of years when you have to make
usually about 2 years for me. Yeah.
Okay, 2 years. I once made it through with a pair of basketball shoes for about 5 years, and those were borderline on duct tape sexual at that point. So it was time at that point in time as a poor college kid to make the investment. But we've got a lot to get into onto today's show. Thank you everyone for joining us. Kara, King 3, J Rock, Enslow, Matthew. Thank you everyone for being here. Obviously, the big topic for today is going to be Kevin Durant. He spoke to the media for the first time. We were originally going to talk to Cody Martin and Micic, but I was glad for the changeup. We got to talk to KD and address all of these trade rumors before he potentially returns tomorrow and goes out and becomes part of the 30K club, which would have been awkward to have all those questions at the same time. So I was glad that he was able to talk with us today. And honestly, I posted one clip from my account, one clip from the PHNX Suns account, and people are already freaking out over what he was saying. But as someone who was there and was partaking in the 13 minutes that he spoke to the media for, I thought he did about as good a job as you could possibly do in diffusing an awkward situation, an uncomfortable situation, which he probably felt some type of way about. But the way that he handled all of this was really impressive to me. And I think people are going to always look at his body language. They're always going to look for drama when it comes to Kevin Durant. But I do want to preface all of this by saying that we're going to play a lot of clips from his media availability. We're going to post the whole media availability online on YouTube so you guys can watch the whole thing through. Because I really did think that he reaffirmed that Phoenix is where he wants to be, and that he understands that this is a business. Were you able to catch any of the clips or any of the information beforehand?
I got to see a couple of clips as I was doing research. What stands out to me is the confidence that he spoke with. He didn't leave any room for ambiguity or, well, he might have missed. No, he was very straightforward with the discernment and really how he dictated with his conversation, and assertive with the responses to leave no room for thoughts to creep in, because he understands how murky of a situation it's already been. So for that part alone, especially if you're talking about trying to put a Band-Aid on a locker room to get the most out of the season that you possibly can, any more outside noise is only going to hurt like a times 10 multiplier. So I think he did a great job with that. You said in one of your tweets, professional and professionalism, I believe specifically. That was exactly what it looked like to me.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's dive into some of these clips. Obviously, if you're just catching up, or if you we're living under a rock for the last week, Kevin Durant's name did come up in multiple trade rumors. Apparently, he was being dangled by the Suns in a deal with the Golden State Warriors that would have brought Jimmy Butler to Phoenix, which just really didn't make sense. I had one source that confirmed that those were made up, but all of the reporting and multiple sources have since confirmed to me that he was, in fact, being dangled, which is a very uncomfortable situation. So when Kevin Durant was asked about these trade rumors, this is what he had to say.
No, I always had a goal of just playing my contract out and seeing what happens. I can't focus on a year and a half down the line.
We're going to pull up that clip in just a minute. That was the next clip that we have lined up. That was one more speaking to his potential future in Phoenix because he is due for the 2-year extension there. But we do have the clip on him just addressing the trade rumors.
It's just business, man. It's just part of the business, you know. Everybody is bought and sold in this league, you know, so anybody could be up for auction, you know what I mean? So I understand that. It's just about getting back on the court, trying to go out there and play the game that I love, you know. It's a part of the business, though, man. We all got to understand that.
And James was talking about you being a pro and that you've heard it before throughout your career. Like, this is nothing new. But on the flip side, also it was out there that they were trying to trade you for Jimmy. So I'm asking, how do you feel about that?
I've been around noise before, where whole spotlights on your team and people got so much to say about the group. Yeah, I've been through that before. And like I said, I understand the business, and that's what we all signed up for. And nobody's above the system, you know, as much as, you know, how much status I got and how much I've acquired in this league, you're still not above the business, and I always understood that. So it's about doing the best I can on the floor, man, and focusing on that, keeping the main thing, the business, that'll take care of itself.
Speaking of business.
So throughout his media availability today, he went back to that. It's part of the business. The business is the business. It was something, I mean, he referenced it probably 10 times, I would say, maybe more. What did you take from his initial response there?
I couldn't help but think back to the things that he mentioned about 2 weeks ago when it was inching closer and closer to the deadline and the Butler noise got louder as well as other trade targets. And he just spoke to everybody having been in that position before and them needing to just buckle in and stay focused and understand that that's part of the game. And speaking to the media, saying that everybody that's in this room understands that the business is the business. Pretty much verbatim heard that in a hash version of that today. Since the dust has settled on the trade deadline, it's a little different when he's the person that's involved versus speaking to players on the periphery for the Suns that were involved in those conversations. But generally, kind of stays streamlined with the same train of thought.
Yeah, now I think a lot of people are going to look into the bought and sold comment, and you know, they're going to relate it to the things that Dennis Schroeder said recently as well. But I really do think, like, for him, the focus is that it is just a business. He understands that, you know, I get paid millions of dollars to do this. I understand that this is what comes with that privilege, being able to play the game that I love. It for him, it has always been, despite all of what everyone else tries to make it about with him and whatever goes on behind the scenes, it has always been first and foremost for Kevin Durant about the basketball, about getting to do what he loves, about what goes on in the facility with his teammates, with his coaches. That is always first and foremost for him. But there is the natural follow-up, even acknowledging that the business is the business. There is the natural follow-up. Okay, what does this mean for his future in Phoenix? How does that impact, you know, how he feels about the Suns front office? And this is what Kevin Durant had to say when he was asked about that.
No, I always had a goal of just playing my contract out and seeing what happens. I can't focus on a year and a half down the line. I try to focus on the day ahead of me, and I know that'll be a topic. That's probably the most frustrating part about being in trade talks, is that the microscope won't be on solely just me the rest of the season. And my body language, you know, how I speak to you guys after the games, you know, how I'm looking on the bench, that stuff would be magnified, which sucks. But like I said, that's a part of the business I got to just deal with and accept. But if I keep the main thing, then, you know, that could be the main focus. You know, we turn around and play well, people focus on that.
That's the biggest one for me is, and this is something James Jones alluded to in his press conference as well, is that if the Suns were winning, none of this would be an issue. I still do think, even with the Suns not winning, that trading Kevin Durant for Jimmy Butler would have been insane. But I appreciate the way that he answered that question in terms of, because there's a lot of speculation when he turned down or when they didn't sign a 1-year extension. that it was going to be about signing a 2-year extension this summer because he could sign a longer extension. He could sign for more money. That would set his contract up perfectly with Devin Booker's for the next couple of years. And now, because of this whole situation, the focus is going to be, well, maybe he didn't sign it because he was uncertain or because the Suns were uncertain. And so I think for him, he said this earlier in the season when we asked him about it as well and not getting that extension done. His thing was, I'm going to play out my contract and then we're going to go from there. But for him, it's never been about like, I'm unhappy in Phoenix. I'm uncertain in Phoenix. So I appreciate the way that he acknowledged that, like, if we can turn things around, if we start winning, none of this is a conversation. And the focus is going to be on me and my body language and all this stuff for the rest of the year.
Yeah, that's the funny part. We talked about it over these last 2 games in the pregame and postgame. Especially stemming from James Johnson's comments after the deadline. And before we got to the clips that you provided us from James, I was heavily emphasizing that if they win games, if they simply play close to the level that they are expected to, these conversations aren't even being had. But because there's so much ambiguity, because there's been such highs and lows this season, a 500 pace, that naturally opens up the back door for these types of conversations to start to take precedence in general discourse over the actual basketball. And that's, I mean, again, what he said, what James Jones said are directly in alignment. I don't feel like they're just kind of putting on talking hats. I think they generally mean that. They win basketball games. They get to where they're supposed to be. If they even finish the season where they were expected to, these conversations grow, they get a suppressor put to them.
Yeah, they've both been around the league long enough to know that this is how it works. And like I said on a show last week, I think everybody involved here is very surprised by where this team currently is, like in terms of being 500. Because we knew that injuries could be a problem for this group. We knew that adjusting to a new coaching staff, implementing a few new players, those could all be potential hurdles. None of us expected this team to be 500 heading into the year. There were a lot of, people around the league, analysts, what have you, that were picking the Suns to finish in the top 3, top 4 in the West. And instead they are barely in the play-in situation. So if they climb up into a top 6 spot, maybe some of that noise dies down, not all of it, because I think we can all agree at this point, this team might not be contending for a title this year. But I do think there is something to the effect of everyone is very surprised by how this season has turned out. And I think that causes people to maybe react a little bit more emotionally, more irrationally, just because you're in an uncomfortable situation where you didn't think that was going to be the case. And I'm not talking about KD in this situation. I'm talking about front office. I'm talking about players. Everybody's a little bit more on edge than they would normally be because it's like, this is not where we should be. And as much as the fan base is disappointed, everyone on the inside of this organization is right there with you guys. But I do think it kind of, all of this begs the question about how he handled this situation and what his reaction was, because the reporting was that he was blindsided. And as much as he's been through things like this before, he's never been through something quite like this before. Here's what he had to say to all of that.
And obviously, you're a pro, you've been through this, but
let's get this straight. I haven't been through this before, but I understand what's going on,
Can you give us an idea, Kevin, what it's like to go through something like that and then have to come back and act like, just everything's fine again? That seems like that would be tough.
No, because my teammates, my coaches, they're not the ones that's having these conversations. It's usually the front office and the people that I don't really see as much as my teammates and coaches. So, I can lock in on the task at hand and focus on the team and my coaching staff as much as I can, because that's the most important thing. And like I said, let the business take care of itself. And whoever called me and tell me I need to go, then I got to go. But if I can, like I said, I wanted to stay here and figure this thing out and, see this thing through. So if I can get in the way of something like a trade, then why not, So, like I said, like I've been saying, it's all a part of the game, and it's something that we got to accept and deal with and move forward. So, if, we got a game tomorrow, I'll try to focus on.
I think him emphasizing wanting to be here, wanting to figure this thing out, and if he can get in the way of something potentially that's not in alignment with that happening, why not? That's what you want to hear from someone that's arguably your best player. Is not your franchise player, but It's arguably your best player, and it's someone that is heavily aligned with whether you are a contending team or not on paper.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you want to hear from someone like Kevin Durant.
Yeah, the reporting, everything that I've gotten from Kevin publicly, everything that we've heard privately is that he still wants to be here, that he's wanted to be here all along, that he wants to retire here. And until he was dangled in trade talks the last week, reportedly, like that was the Suns' indication as well. So there is that little bit of change up on one end of the equation, but it is nice to hear that he wants to be part of the solution, not the problem here. I did find it interesting that one little sentence, I don't know if you caught this, but if I got to get in the way of a trade or something, basically alluding to what was reported that he is the one who shut down the trade to the Warriors. That I found kind of a little bit interesting there. Any final thoughts before we move on to our next batch of KD clips?
They don't get to where they want to be ultimately this season or even close to that if he's not locked in. And all of the answers that we've dove into the details on so far this episode have been directly in alignment with that. It starts at the top and everybody else kind of falls in alignment from there. And he's wearing that the way that he should right now.
Absolutely. Guys, thank you all for being here in the chat. We've got over 500 of you across different streaming options here, but we've only got 21 likes. We need to set a like goal for this chat today, Steven. What are we setting it at?
Let's go 225.
225. Okay, we got over 200 likes to go, guys. Make sure you hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. As always, we appreciate you being here in the chat. We are going to move on to a couple more Kevin Durant comments that I found interesting right after this break. If you've been following the show for a while, you know how excited I get when we do get to talk about Spinato's Pizzeria. It's actually where I held the day before party for my family and friends before Amy and I got married. Some of my favorite pizza in the Valley, and it is the place to be for Suns fans as well. They have Spinato set up throughout the arena now, which is a great upgrade from what they used to have on the pizza front. And they're also hosting official watch parties throughout the season where you can watch games with the Suns dancers, with the Gorilla. You have a chance to win free Suns tickets, gift certificates, exciting prizes. They even have like a pizza competition. So it's like horse, but instead of spelling out horse, it's Pizza. And you can win free pizza for a year and tickets to the Suns game on April 9th if you participate and get to win that. So what's better than free tickets and free pizza? Feel the energy, cheer for your team, and win big. Get all the information on the watch parties and pizza basketball contests at spinatospizzeria.com. Spinato's official pizza of the Phoenix Suns. And if you need a ride there, our favorite ride-hailing service is definitely Waymo. I have been in a Waymo before, and a lot of people kind of freak out about it, but it's very comfortable. It makes you feel at ease. Waymo's autonomous ride-hailing service consists entirely of all-electric Jaguar I-Pace vehicles, providing a consistent zero-emission experience for their riders. I didn't know this, but they have done 150,000 trips per week across San Fran, Los Angeles, and Phoenix. So it is rapidly becoming the place to be in terms of hailing a ride there. They were the first company to serve a fully autonomous ride with no human behind the wheel back in 2015. So they've been around for quite a while, and they have over 40 million miles of real-world driving experience. So that's enough to drive you to the moon and back 80 times.
That's not an insignificant sample size.
No, not at all. So Waymo, download the Waymo One app and ride today. Steven, all right, we got more Kevin Durant stuff to talk about. Surprise, surprise. Guys, make sure to hit that like button if you are just joining us. We've already gone through some Kevin Durant things in terms of what he said at practice today. We've got a few more to get through before we move on to our Cody Martin and Micić breakdowns, as well as our expectations for the rest of the season now that the trade deadline has passed. But before we move on to that, I do feel like, again, a lot of people are going to look at these quotes out of context. They're going to see these clips and they're going to overreact to Kevin Durant wants out. Kevin Durant doesn't want to be here. But in Kevin Durant's own words, he actually found it as a positive that so many teams kind of want him. Here's what he had to say about that.
I mean, like I said, it's a part of the game, you know, and it's a double-edged sword when you build yourself up to be this great and you do it for this long. You know, shit like that happens, you know. You know, it's not a bad thing that people around the league want me to play for them. It's not a bad thing that my organization here is fighting off people to keep me on the team, or even dangle me in trades. That's just part of being a part of the high demand, so I can understand that part of it. This is the most important thing, though, when that ball is bouncing and we're in here together as a unit, as a family. So I look forward to that every day.
So I love this response from Kevin Durant because he acknowledges that he was probably dangled, and that maybe it was less trying to fight teams off from me. I mean, they did to some degree.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, there were more teams that were calling about Kevin Durant than there were teams that were not at the trade deadline, based on what I have heard and what the reporting has been.
Mm-hmm.
But I appreciate that he reaffirmed, like, when you're this good, it comes with the territory. I understand it.
I always enjoy his perspective on anything basketball related. And anytime we get an opportunity to hear him talking on the microphone, I feel like there's always something or a few things to take away from it. And this answer was one example of it. It's not talking about direct basketball, but just gauging his value across the league. You could look at it as, man, why are they trying to trade me? You could look at it as, you know what? I still have a fairly high value across the league if that many teams are just calling about what's the opportunity they might have at potentially trying to have a conversation about bringing me into their franchise. So I appreciate his perspective. Honestly, I think he's very open-minded. You could tell, you could hear him like thinking through the response he was going to give to this answer, but not in like a calculated manner.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said off the top of the show, I thought today's press conference was a masterclass in diffusing a lot of the potential awkwardness. And I know people are going to take little snippets and run with them because that's what happens inevitably to not just Kevin Durant, but pro athletes in general, it feels like. But he really did. I mean, every answer was, I don't want to say calculated because that feels like there's an angle to it, but he put a lot of thought into what he was saying beforehand. And I think the way that he answered this speaks to him wanting to get rid of all of these trade rumors, kind of bury these things deep down. And if we have to revisit them over the summer, we have to revisit them because we know that the Suns are going to have to do what they need to do to try to improve the team. And Kevin Durant's name is going to be chief among them because of Bradley Beal's no trade clause, because of the fact that Devin Booker, you're not going to trade Devin Booker because he's, 7-8 years younger. So he understands that this is going to be a recurring topic, but I felt like he, with the responses that he gave today, reaffirmed that he wants to be with the Suns, reaffirmed that he is happy there, reaffirmed that the most important thing to him is what's going on on the practice court, in the locker room with his teammates, on the court with his teammates, and try to kind of squash a lot of this stuff as best as he could. And we in the media, we did our best to make sure that we covered every single base today. And so I followed up with him about whether it's frustrating to him that that's kind of the conception, that it's all about his unhappiness now in Phoenix, when for the most part, he has affirmed and reaffirmed that he does want to be here. This is what he had to say.
That's a little, like I would keep saying, it's just a part of the game, but if I want to talk in detail, that's a little frustrating that it's going to be in question because I never even insinuated that I wanted to move teams. So, my happiness will be evaluated, but when it should be your front office's happiness that you should be monitoring every day just because they make these decisions, So I get that I'm more visible than everybody, and I got the bigger name, and so everybody's going to try to understand what my feelings are like in this time. But it's more than just me that goes through this situation. There's a lot of people involved, so I guess you want to understand my feelings, but it should be a lot of other people's feelings that you should be trying to figure out too and see where their heads at. So it's more than just me, and that's how I feel. But even if they don't check in on everybody else that's involved and they only focus on me, that's just the game that I'm in. That's the life that I chose. I got to accept it.
You feel like you deserve a heads up? I
don't deserve nothing. I got to work to earn and get everything. I don't deserve anything. I don't expect anything from any person. I'm not entitled to anything. I just go out there and do my job, and if I'm compensated for doing my job, cool. If not, I move on. That's how I kind of look at stuff. So I don't expect nothing from nobody. I don't expect them or feel entitled that they owe me anything. So I just got to focus on my job.
He's spoken a few different times since that decision. I think it was 2017 when he chose to go from Oklahoma City to Golden State. And he said he was aware of the repercussions that would come from making such a substantial decision that would have reverb across the entire league and change the literal landscape and how players go about trying to map out their next decisions, et cetera, et cetera. And I think this is just another example of it. He's fine with whatever comes with the conversations that are always around his name. Is he happy here? Does he want to stay? Does he want to go? Is he in limbo? What's his connection with the front office? Like all of those things, he's like, it's whatever, but I've never said that I wanted to go. I've never said anything less than wanting to be where I'm at now, doing exactly what I'm doing now, which is building with the team. Yeah. So again, when the response is so consistent, even before he got to Phoenix, the perspective that he had, it's just everything, because I don't think you can have a player that's as great as he is with the attention that he has if they're not strong mentally, for lack of a better phrase, to be able to shoulder the brunt of all of that attention and channel it the right way to not allow for it to diffuse the locker room.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it was interesting that he kind of pointed out the irony by highlighting, like, it's the front office's happiness that you should also be checking in on, because I didn't try to trade myself. I want to be here. It was the front office that was rethinking some things or toying around with some different trade concepts there, which I think is a fair point to make in this situation, because obviously the front office is not happy. Obviously the team itself is not happy sitting at 500. But in terms of Kevin Durant possibly being traded for Jimmy Butler, that was not his decision. And based on the reporting, it was him that shut it down in the first place. So I found that interesting. Steven, do you have any final thoughts on Kevin Durant? We are going to post that full availability on YouTube so you can hear what he had to say about all of that in full. Also his thoughts on Kendrick's halftime performance, how his ankle is doing, all of that good stuff is in there. But Steven, any final thoughts from you?
I think the last thing with KD, I don't know if there's another superstar level athlete that we hear when someone throws the word deserve in any question that's posed to him, he almost immediately, it's like a trigger word. He cuts them off respectfully, shuts it down, and lets people know that I'm not deserving of anything. His maintained status has always been, I have to go and earn anything that I want. And I think that's something that can get lost in translation when people are great at a specific task or job. You might think that they're deserving of it just because of the work that they've put in prior to that moment. And he's so great, even at 36, because he just approaches the game without expecting things to be handed to him. There's a stubbornness that all the greats have about them, and he has it as much as anybody. And I think all of the stories that are written and told about him and his work ethic and all of the things like that directly align with that more than anything else.
Yep. Always about the basketball with this guy, always about the bond with his teammates and the work that they put in, the sweat equity. And for him, a lot of it is us versus the world, because he understands that a lot of these people that are asking these questions or writing these articles or speaking on this podcast are not people that are in the gym with these people that see everything that goes on behind the scenes. So kudos to him for that and for the way that he conducted himself, because like I said, he handled this like a true professional and did his best to diffuse a very awkward situation. So if you liked Kevin Durant's responses, the way he handled this, hit the like button. If you are worried about Kevin Durant's future and with the Phoenix Suns, hit the like button anyway. We are going to go through Cody Martin and Micić breakdowns, as well as our expectations for the Suns now that the trade deadline has passed, after this break. Steven, I know you're a numbers guy, so I'm going to throw some your way, because whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Bet365 has 90 million users worldwide, which is kind of insane. That's a lot of users worldwide. And they stream 780,000 events each year. I did not know that. They got early payout offers across the NBA and the NHL. For example, you're a winner if your team goes up by 20 points with an instant payout on straight bets and parlay selections marked as winners on the NBA side of things. They kind of pioneered live in-game betting, which is a really cool thing that we get to be partners with them. And their markets available for live in-game betting across 78 sports. I did not know there were 78 sports, but they have that many apparently. So this open account offer, win or lose, until February 12th. Breaking news from Bet365. New customers now get $150 in bonus bets when you bet $5, win or lose. Sign up, use the code PHNX PHNX365, deposit $10, and place a bet for $5 to get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins or loses. Bonus bets can be used on the spread, totals, player props, futures, and more. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 plus and physically located in AZ. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP, text NEXT-STEP to 53342 or visit problemgambling.az.gov. I'm not going to lie, I had to race over here from practice to be here for the show and read some lovely ads for you people. And at this point, I could probably use something that makes me smell a little bit nicer. So this is where we transition to Mando. One thing that has made me more confident is Mando whole body deodorant. And it's unique from any other deodorant because it's safe to use anywhere on your body. That includes your pits, your thighs, folds, belly buttons, butt cracks, your feet, whatever stinks. Go ahead and put some Mando on it. It's created by a doctor who saw firsthand how normal BO was at being misdiagnosed and mistreated. Mando starter pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with a solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice like the mini body wash or deodorant wipes, and free shipping. And as a special offer for listeners, new customers get $5 off a starter pack with our exclusive code. That equates to over 40% off your starter pack. That's a pretty good deal. We love numbers over here at Take That for Data. So use code PHNX at shopmando.com. That's shopmando.com. Please support our show and tell them that we sent you. Smell fresher, stay drier, and boost your confidence from head to toe with Mando. When I first heard that we were sponsoring or partnering with Mando, I thought it was The Mandalorian, and I got very excited as a Star Wars person. But this is also just as exciting for anyone who needs to smell maybe a little bit nicer now that it's getting hot again in the Phoenix Sun. Steven, Phoenix Suns. We are going to talk about Cody Martin and Vasilije. We were supposed to get them in practice today for availability. Luckily, we switched to Kevin Durant, so we were able to diffuse that situation. But I wanted to get your thoughts on both of these guys, and we'll start with Martin. We'll start with some injury updates because I did ask Bud about Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, and Grayson Allen, what their prognosis is moving forward to tomorrow's game, and also Cody Martin, who has been dealing with a sports hernia.
I'll start with Brad. I think, he's did not practice today, so I think it's going to take him a little bit more time. Kevin did everything today, looked good. We'll see how he reacts to today, but I think we're hopeful for tomorrow. And I'd say Grayson probably did a little bit less, but I think hopeful for tomorrow, and that I think just a little bit more time, and those two guys should be good.
Do you guys have a status for any of them yet?
That's not my job. I'll just coach, so I don't even know what the status report means anymore.
Have they given you an indication on Cody? I know he was kind of dealing with the sports hernia, what his kind of timetable might look like.
Yeah, I think the next couple days. I don't think we foresee him, clearing the hurdles and being ready to go, and the break could be, the timing for him could be good. So. Again, I don't want to speak on all the medical, even though I know that's part of my role. But I think my guess is Cody will need these couple of days and then the break, and I think continue to evaluate where he is.
Okay, so for starters, I'm going to start marking guys down as hopeful on the injury report instead of questionable or probable. I'm just going to say hopeful. But reading all of that, it does feel like I don't know what's going on with Bradley Beal's toe, and it doesn't feel like the Suns do either, at least in terms of what they've released to us, because when we asked Bud about it the other day, he had said, yeah, we're not 100% sure what's going on with that or what the timetable's going to look like, and if he didn't practice at all today, that must be some type of toe injury that's holding him up. It was his left great toe, for those of you who were not aware. Which just basically means your big ass toe. Kevin Durant and Grayson, it's good that they are practicing, that they're both hopeful for tomorrow. From Cody's perspective, that kind of sounded like he's not going to play until after the All-Star break.
That's a tough blow because you need to be having him build up as much game reps and chemistry as he possibly can. Stemming from over the weekend, obviously giving him time to get acclimated to the move from Charlotte to Phoenix, et cetera, et cetera. But on the Bradley Beal front, that ambiguity with an injury that's been a couple of games now, about 4 or 5 days, that's not the most confident response that you've ever heard. And it really doesn't, to your point, seem like they're exactly sure, A, what it is, or B, what the duration of his time away from actual basketball activity will be.
Mhm.
So for a team that's in dire straits in terms of needing to turn somewhat of a corner prior to the break and not being able to do that with the full roster is tough.
Yeah, absolutely. And as Andres in the chat said, it's so crazy to talk about grown men's toes. Yes, it is, but that is where we are 2 games away from the All-Star break. So thank you for being here with us, guys. Make sure to hit that like button if you have not. We haven't cracked 100 likes yet, so we're well off from our goal of 225 likes. Make sure to do that because Noah always has a special surprise lined up if we hit our like goal. We got some work to do on that front. I know a lot of people were kind of concerned with the Cody Martin sports hernia situation, especially in conjunction with like the Hornets and that Mark Williams trade being rescinded. How does that impact? Because they have a center coming back. Do they still want Jusuf Nurkic? Do the Suns still want Cody Martin if he is going to be out for maybe longer than they were anticipating? And then Nurk didn't help the situation today when a Hornets fan was tweeting about, are we going to see Nurk? Is he going to be out there? And is he going to get traded back? And he just responded like, or something like that. Fortunately, Gambo did squash that situation and saying that the trade is, we already knew the trade had gone through. They had already made it official. To be fair, the Mark Williams trade was made official before it was rescinded. But we haven't gotten an indication that this trade will be rescinded. So Nurk is in Charlotte. He's not on the injury report for the Hornets tonight. Cody Martin and Vasa, they were at the Suns game the other night. They were at the practice facility today. Hopefully we will see Cody Martin in the near future when he is able to return from that hernia. So what can Suns fans expect from Cody Martin when he does return is, I think, the bigger question. And Steven, I'll let you kind of give your initial thoughts on what he might be able to provide.
Tons of added value. A whole lot of it. He's not a player without flaws.
Yeah.
Most of those coming on the offensive end of the floor than anything else. But I think he's with the perfect team to basically insulate him on the offensive end so that his weaknesses can't be used to the detriment of the team, while also squeezing as much of the value out of him on the defensive end as they possibly can. And I know I saw a lot of people on my timeline and people asking me, what does this mean for Ryan Dunn and his minutes? I can't speak for Mike Budenholzer. It's been hard to get a read on Mike Budenholzer all season in multiple respects. But what I can say from my personal opinion, there should be value in having not just one player that can bring something similar to what Ryan Dunn does in terms of being viable enough on ball that you know at least he's going to do his job. That's a gigantic dynamic to have to depend on a rookie to bring when his clear role is now in limbo with the roster as well. So I think being able to double down and have 2 above average point of attack defenders to sprinkle in different lineups over the course of games that you can put on the guys, the dudes across the league is fun. And speaking to Cody, Charles Lee and Charlotte used him in a handful of unique ways, not just at the point of attack, picking up 94 feet. He's guarding wings like Paul George and Jason Tatum and having fun doing so. Those guys were not having fun while he was guarding them. And in addition to that, I also saw Charles Lee putting them on centers. And that's a wrinkle within switching schemes that I'll continue to say that the Suns need to find a way to lean into. It's not for a lack of personnel. I think it's just a lack of them experimenting past what we've seen just hasn't worked as their defensive base. And I've seen Cody guard Gerald Allen. I've seen him guard Karl Anthony Towns. I've seen him guard Rudy Gobert. I've seen him guard a couple of other centers in that mix of above average to borderline elite level centers, not just guarding them in the post, but being able to get into them on the perimeter, stonewall them from getting to the post if they are trying to negotiate themselves there, and then force those screens that they set in the switches, and then helping the overall defensive process.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought up the point of attack thing because that's something that doing my research for a breakdown, and I'm sure you doing your research for your video breakdown that's coming out soon. Make sure to keep an eye out for that. Steven's going to go into detail with some clips about Cody Martin's game on the PHNX Sports YouTube channel, so make sure to look out for that. But the big thing that stood out was the versatility that they used him with in Charlotte on the defensive side of the ball and how often he did guard the point of attack. So over at the B-Ball Index, which they provide some really great in-depth stats there, he was 97th percentile in defensive positional versatility in terms of the different positions that he spent a lot of time on. 92nd percentile in his percentage of time guarding shot creators, and 79th in percentage of time guarding ball handlers, primary ball handlers. So in terms of what you lost with the Josh Okogie trade, Cody Martin is not an elite defender maybe on that front like a Josh Okogie, but he does bring some of those same qualities in terms of we have a 6'6" wing who we can put on the primary ball handler or point guard, who we can put on a forward if we need to, who we can put on a 4 or a 5 if we have to, in switching type situations. And the Suns don't switch a ton, but hopefully this kind of opens the door a little bit more for Bud to be a little more flexible on that front. I found it fascinating. He was 74th percentile in how much time he spent guarding post scorers. So he is a guy that there was no percentage that he spent more than 25% on any of the 5 positions. Like if you're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it was 24%, 24%, 21%, 17%, and 14%. Like he is very even across the board. And I think that versatility could help them, even if it doesn't move the needle a ton for the Suns.
I could not agree with that statement more. And I think it's funny that looking at how much time he spent on each position is that
crazy.
That is exactly that is literally the template for defensive versatility. And speaking to him specifically at the point of attack, which is where a majority of his value is going to be brought, just to rattle off the names in order of who Basketball Index has as the best point of attack defenders this season, from 1 to where Cody is ranked at 14th. You got Asar Thompson, Chris Dunn, Amen Thompson, Cason Wallace, Dyson Daniels, Keon Ellis, Jaden McDaniels, Drew Smith from Miami, Hayward Highsmith from Miami, Cam Reddish, who is a free agent right now, Lou Dort, Peyton Watson, Lonzo Ball, and then you get to Cody Martin. That's the cloth of defenders that he's cut with from the advanced stats metrics side of things. And it very much matches the eye test, which I think is the important thing. I know sometimes you can get lost with the numbers. The numbers are only relevant when they support the eye test or they combat the eye test to bring context. And that's exactly what we're bringing now. Speaking to that, him being lumped in with those names of point of attack defenders and seeing how they've wreaked havoc against the Suns and the entire rest of the NBA is something that really can be a positive for them in terms of, again, just adding value. I think the big thing with him is multiple efforts. And if he's navigating screens and pick and roll and he gets chipped on the screen, he hardly gets hit. If he does, he can fight back, get up a review contest, or just block shots. And I think that's something else kind of stemming one thing in terms of his defensive dynamics to another. He is a really good rim protector for someone that's a guard/wing. He's not necessarily Rudy Gobert in any respect, but he's good with walling up. He's good at just contesting with verticality. And he's just generally really good with his hands. And I think the Suns having someone that takes ownership defensively, not unlike Royce O'Neal, not unlike Ryan Dunn, to add to that blue-collar boys group on the perimeter side of things is as invaluable as anything they could have added that wasn't Jimmy Butler at the trade deadline.
Yeah, in terms of the defense, I think we can both agree this is primarily a defensive upgrade for the Phoenix Suns. Adding Cody Martin, it is disappointing that we might not get to see him till after the All-Star break. Hopefully it's immediately after the All-Star break. I do worry a little bit about how his arrival is going to impact Ryan Dunn's minutes. Hopefully the decline that we've seen in those minutes for Dunn recently is just because of the ankle. Bud did allude to that pregame when I followed up again with him about that. Kind of, he needs to be fully healthy. Dunn has said he's fully healthy, but he's been demoted from the starting role that replaced Bradley Beal to a bench role to now only playing 10 to 15 minutes. That's not enough pre-Cody Martin trade, and now post-Cody Martin trade, it's certainly not going to be enough, but I am interested to see how that shakes out. Did want to ask you one more thing before we move on. The offensive side of the ball is obviously what people are going to worry about or question. He's not a great shooter. He's career 32% from three, 32% from three this year. What can Cody Martin bring to the Suns on the offensive end?
Well, because of his activity that he plays with defensively and how sustained that is, he can bridge the gap in transition for the Suns. He adds another piece that excels in the open court. but also more than anyone else on their roster right now, plays to that strength and being able to play an event-causing style of defense that allows for him to play to his strengths on offense, as well as Devin Booker and Kevin Durant and Grayson Allen. Three of the majority of the time they're elite level talents in the transition offense. And he can finish at the basket in that context extremely well, or fill a lane in transition to kind of organize things the way that the Suns would want to. But if we're talking about specifically in the half court, his cutting, he has a high IQ in terms of feeling for when to cut based off of what type of actions might be going on strong side or weak side. He cuts to put himself in the position to grab offensive rebounds to help bridge that gap, and just generally doing the marginal things to offset the lack of attention that teams give him when he's spaced out. He's also another piece that can add to their guard group in terms of setting screens. He's always going to have the weakest perimeter defender on the court on him, understands that, knows when to bring that player to primary action just to flip a switch and then either roll downhill like Ryan Dunn does and play in the short roll, get to the floaters, or just generally set that screen and get out the way to allow for them to go against a less advantageous matchup from a defensive perspective.
That makes sense. I like hearing that he is a good, smart cutter, that he can help as kind of this extra auxiliary piece, because this, Lord knows the Suns do not need more guys who need the ball in their hands to be effective. So that is a helpful thing.
One last quick thing too, I almost forgot. Played point guard his senior year in Nevada.
He did.
He is not a traditional point guard in any sense, but I think the Suns having someone that's not named the Big Three that can be a secondary initiator of offense. If one of those three is getting pressed full court, he can get them efficiently into their sets, or at least get it across the half-court line in a timely manner. But also, when he's spaced to the second side of actions, he can run a secondary pick and roll, not unlike Grayson Allen. But the processing speed and the passing catalog that he has to make any pass that the defense is giving or conceding, I think is very important. He instantly becomes a top 3 lob passer for the Suns, which the bar was low for that. So that's not saying too much, but he's just a quick processor. He doesn't hold on to the ball for too long, and I think that's another positive that he brings to a team that can certainly use more of that from the role player group.
Absolutely. Need more quick processing on this team.
Yes.
A couple of quick things before we move on. Devin Booker was not named as a all-star injury replacement. That nod is going to Kyrie Irving in Anthony Davis's spot, and Trae Young got it in the East. For, what was it, Giannis that was injured?
Giannis,
so no Devin Booker in the All-Star game, unfortunately. Leave a like if you think he was snubbed. Leave a like if you don't think he was snubbed. And we will be back right after this break. All right, Stephen, I'm here to talk to you about our friends at Colt Cannabis, who are now available at your local True Leaf with a huge variety of premium flower and a True Leaf exclusive magic marker. The Valley has been asking for her, and now she's back. Visit trueleaf.com to find the local shop near you, or place an order and tell them that PHNX sent you, as always. Great flower is hard to find these days, and luckily our friends at Colt Cannabis have been dropping absolute fire here at PHNX Studios and now at your local True Leaf. That includes the True Leaf exclusive magic marker strain, and a new True Leaf location opened in Maricopa last month. So lots of fun stuff going on that front. Head over to trueleaf.com to find your local shop or place an order online. And again, tell them PHNX sent you. I can't emphasize that enough, because there's plenty of Colt Cannabis around this office. You can come in and you can just tell some days. We've got a lot of fans in this office, and that is not by accident. Also want to talk to you guys about the Carol Royce team. They're a real estate team that is family owned and locally operated, with 3 generations of family members serving the Valley of the Sun. That is 3 generations. That's quite a long time. They have an incredible track record as well. They've sold over 12,000 homes across the Valley, and Carol just knows the Arizona real estate market best. So if you are in the market for buying a new home, highly recommend the Carol Royce team. And they're also the sponsor of my new post-game segment, which is an exciting thing as well. So we love the Carol Royce team over there. If you are considering buying a home in 2025, the name to trust is Carol Royce. Your home sold guaranteed realty. Move up to one of our listings and we'll buy your home for cash. Have questions, call today or visit Carol online at carolroyceteam.com. That is carolroyceteam.com. All right, Stephen, we didn't really get to touch on Vasilije very much, so we'll quickly talk about him, because I don't think he's going to factor into the rotation very much. I think he's a little bit bigger as a 6'3" point guard as opposed to Monte and Tyus being 6'1", which I feel might be a generous listing there. Anything that the people need to know about Micic?
I think that Micic is still a project on the NBA side of things. He's a player that stems from the gluttony of picks that the Oklahoma City Thunder have made over the last handful of years. And they haven't missed on any. I think he's just been a work in progress. I don't think he's a bad player in any capacity. I'm just not sure if he fits the Suns in terms of what they need from the point guard position in particular, and that's someone that can bring it up the court at times, but excel playing off the ball in the ways in which they need them to. And to that point, even more, I just don't feel like he's going to factor into the long term in terms of even past this season, but even in the short term, just looking at where the roster is right now and what they're trying to work towards. I'm not sure where the minutes are going to come from because Monte Morris hasn't played in a relevant amount of minutes in games in the last 2 weeks. We've seen Tyus's minutes slowly decrease, even with Bradley Beal out of the lineup. So just not sure what the point guard process is for Bud right now.
Yeah, I feel like he's the part of the trade, and we knew this about Cody Martin as well, but the flexibility with both of these guys' contracts beyond this season, I think is part of the big draw and why they traded Jusuf Nurkic and a pick to get these guys. I do know the Suns like Cody Martin. They think he can help. They're not stubborn, or they're not blind to the fact that Cody Martin is not going to fix this Suns team. But they do like what he can provide defensively and on the wing. But I think for them, for both pieces of this trade coming back, it's the fact that I think Cody Martin's salary is completely non-guaranteed next year, and that's the last year of his contract. Micic, last year of his contract, is a team option, so they could decline that if they want to free up cap space and temporarily get below the second tax apron. They're not going to stay there because we've covered this before, but they're going to be about, if they decline both of these guys, they'd be about 10, 11, 12 million below that second tax apron for next year. But they would only have like 7 guys on roster. So by the time they fill out those other 8 remaining roster spots, they would be back above that line. But it does put them closer to ducking that line if they feel the need to do that. So I think that's probably a lot of the incentive behind adding Micic. I don't see him playing a role just because he's not a very efficient shooter. He's a career 32% 3-point shooter. He's shooting a career high 36% this year. But it does feel like, he's a 31-year-old. He's been fantastic overseas for a long time. But a lot of these guys, by the time we get them over here in the NBA, their best years are behind them a little bit.
Yeah, especially considering in the case of players like Luka, and not just Luka, but other players as well in EuroLeague, some of those players are professionals by about 14 years old.
Right.
There's an expedited process to their when their professional careers start and the wear and tear that comes with that over the years. So him being 30, 31, if he's been playing professionally since 16, 17, that's essentially like 35, 36, 37 in terms of his playing days, age-wise. So it gets tough in those situations, and it's not much that you're going to be adding to your game. Once you get to that point, you just kind of are what you are. That's not an indictment to him, but just for the Suns context, I don't know if he fits.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We have a super chat here from Psycho Blue. Thank you for your super chat, $10. B-Ball Cthulhu thinks the Dark Carnival from Something Wicked This Way Comes has arrived in PHX in the form of the KD stands demanding that this place return to nothingness so that KD can escape. Listen, I don't really want to talk on the KD stands in general, just as a rule of thumb. But I will say that it is interesting how people will get mad that the Suns were dangling KD while also advocating for him to be traded elsewhere, like the free KD, but also blame KD. That's unfortunate. I just want to watch Devin Booker and Kevin Durant play basketball. That's what it's been for me from day one. They just haven't built around those two correctly. And now we're sitting in this uncomfortable situation where trading KD is an option that they have to consider. That sucks.
That's the issue of stan culture.
It sucks.
You can't enjoy having 2 of the 12 best scorers at worst in the entire NBA, and when they're both at the peak of their powers, they can both peak out at top 9, top 8. Like, why does it have to?
I don't like that we have to pit them against
the
each other.
Man, enjoy the games, dog. Like,
Enjoy the hoops.
Just enjoy the hoops. It's beautiful. Like the way those two play off of each other, complementary. The way that they play with each other in actions. I mean, you could talk to any scout across the league. That's not fun to have to go into a game trying to figure out how you're going to take one of those two or both of them off the table. Enjoy the basketball, man. This is very much a luxury to have both of them on the same team.
Yeah, absolutely. Another super chat from Mark R. Did Gerald's second apron count the 10% cap bump? I believe so. I think when I looked it up, that was calculating that into it, but I could be wrong. We'll probably need to do more look into that, but honestly, the last 72 to 96 hours have been an absolute blur. So not ruling out that I did not factor that in. I'll be 100% honest with you on that. Steven, before we close for the day, we should probably talk about what we want to see from the Suns now that the trade deadline is over, now that the roster is set. For me, I'm just going to quickly list mine off because they're things I've ranted and raved about on the show before. I don't think that Tyus Jones should be the starter after the All-Star break. And it's nothing personal against Tyus. I think he's been handed a difficult situation in terms of having to come in and be the point guard that they need while not having the ball in his hands. I also think part of that is because Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, and Bradley Beal create advantages much better with the ball in their hands than Tyus Jones was, which was part of our impetus behind them not needing a point guard. But I do think if you're going to play Tyus Jones off the ball and him be a defensive undersized liability on the other end, you got to mitigate those concerns by starting to bring him off the bench. And you can let him run the second unit and empower him in that way. He might have the ball more in his hands doing that than he is right now. But that's my biggest one. Play the best players on your team. Find minutes for Ryan Dunn. Find minutes for Oso Ighodaro, especially if the backup center minutes continue to be very hit or miss, we'll say. I'm curious what kind of stands out to you in terms of what you would like to see or hopes for the Suns beyond the All-Star break.
I would just like to see them show togetherness. I think it's been a very volatile 2 weeks. And I'm glad that Kevin Durant served as basically, for lack of a better phrase, he served as the cleanser for the team with his availability today. And he was really like a piece of sage, if you will. And it felt like you could feel the uplifted spirits in terms of him being able to directly address things. Now you have to see it translate to the game on the court because they have a very heavy schedule with elite level teams that they're going to be going up against over the course of into the break and then very much after that through the finish line. So we're past the halfway mark. Margin for error is almost non-existent right now, and they have to start to right those tides. So I want to see that. I would love to see them defensively start to lean more into switching lineups, not always small ball. But like we talked about with Cody, you have a gluttony of wings that you can stash on the 5, put your center on someone that's deemed a non-shooter or someone that you're okay with shooting, and work the switching from there just to add the slightest bit of nuance. You might not do it for 25 minutes a game, but if you find a 4-minute pocket where you do it and you're able to spark a 12-4 run, and you find another pocket where you're able to do it, and now you can do it with small ball and blend it into your process like that, I think that's important. So just squeezing more versatility out of them defensively. And then the last big thing for me is on offense. Play to your identity. I feel like the team is at its best this season, and this season in particular, when it's Devin Booker operating in pick and roll and being able to pull the strings of the help defense and make the passes that ultimately lead to three-point opportunities for everyone around him, whether directly or in a secondary fashion. Lean more into that identity, but clean up the process in which you go about doing it. Use them in movement a little bit like we saw against Utah. Let them initiate sometimes like we saw against Utah as well. Move them to the mid-post sometimes. There's a lot of different ways you can use them in combination with Kevin Durant in a way that if it's more organized, I feel like it'll benefit the offense more.
Absolutely. We want to thank all of our TV viewers. Make sure to go to gophnx.com. The party always continues there. I like that you brought up the small ball thing because it feels like there's like the Suns small ball is like parentheses derogatory where other teams small ball is parentheses complimentary. Like it hasn't, this team is just small as opposed to playing small ball. Does Bol Bol factor into any of your thinking at this point? Because I know you and I have kind of we've poked fun at the idea that Bol Bol would change the Suns season in any way, and I still stand by that. But over the last 2 games, I do feel like he has earned more of a look.
I don't disagree with that part. He's definitely earned more of a look. I just wonder where the minutes going to come from. So who are the minutes being taken away from? And is he going to be more effective in said allotment of minutes that he takes away from someone else than the person or people that he's taking minutes from would be in those minutes, but also in those lineup constructs? How does the defense react to those players? How is he putting forth value on the defensive end of the floor? Because I think with small ball, people think offensively, but you have to get stops. And you have to be able to switch viably in a connected manner. If those things aren't connected, if those things are sustained, then there's no point in running small ball. So because you're already conceding the size disadvantage. So just little things like that with Bol. He has earned the opportunity though. So what he does with it, I think is going to be something to watch for. And if it happens in these next 2 games going into the break against Memphis and Houston, those are the number 2 and number 3 teams in the West. So if he's going to have some staying power and it's going to be viable, he's going to have to show it in those 2 games.
Yeah, absolutely. The last thing I would like to see is them continue to find ways to generate threes.
Yeah.
I feel like they were doing it early in the season, and then there was that stretch where they really got away from it. And now recently I feel like they're starting to get back to it. They generated 50 in their last game. Didn't make a ton of them, but they generated good looks out of those, just kind of knock them down. I would like to see that continue. I would like to see them, like to your point, build towards something. Like I think you and I can both agree this team is not winning a title this year. They might not even make it out of the first round, but I would like to see them at least build towards a top 6 playoff seed, at least build towards something that you can point to and say, okay, this we can take into next season. This, if we can get past all the KD trade rumors and all the BS of the summer that's going to come our way, we can pinpoint these 2 or 3 things that, like, okay, yeah, Ryan Dunn in this spot works. Yes, you can build a winning team around Devin Booker and Kevin Durant. Just build some type of positive momentum over these last 30-some games so that we're not heading into the offseason thinking, all right, they got to strip this thing down to the studs and start over again, because I cannot do another full-scale rebuild. When I started covering the Suns back in 2015, it was like literally a couple weeks before the trade deadline where they shipped out Goran Dragic and all of that. That was the beginning of the end. And it hasn't, those next 5 years made me rethink what I was doing with my life. Honest to God. People would be like, so what do you do for work? I'm like, oh, I cover the NBA. They're like, that's awesome. What team do you cover? I'm like, the Suns. Are like, oh, that sucks. Like, it was embarrassing. Yeah. That's not the response when you get to say you cover NBA basketball.
Right. That's not how you want to feel about your job.
No, not at all. I was there for I don't want to be here for the 50-plus point loss or 48-point loss to the Blazers on opening night. I don't want to go back to those days. So I would like to see them build at least something for us to feel good about, that they can maybe serve as a foundation moving forward.
Yeah. And I'll say lastly to close, to your point about the 3-point attempts being up, talked about it with Devin Booker, and a lot of the volume of those stemming from his passes in some capacity. The other thing that's different from earlier in the season when they were generating that amount and the in-between point before the last week where they weren't, defense.
Yeah.
If they can put together those pockets of time over the course of games, we always said they would never be a top 5, top 7, top 10 defense, but they can be that in pockets, especially the meaningful ones. That allows for them to play off of their defense. And a lot of the best opportunities you get to look at the basket, especially from deep, come in transition.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. Thank you all for joining us. Make sure to leave a like on your way out. We fell well short of our like goal, which is disappointing, but I understand we're all just kind of running on fumes leading up to the All-Star break. I totally get it, but if you wouldn't mind, leave us a like on your way out. You can follow me on Twitter at Gerald Bourguet. You can follow Steven on Twitter at StevenPG3. And you can follow the show at PHNX_Suns. And until we meet back here again tomorrow for pregame and postgame, just enjoy basketball and enjoy the fact that by all accounts, Kevin Durant does still want to be here.
We all silly like the mayor.